Hello and welcome to Didn't Read It, the podcast that is on a journey through the Regency world of Georgette Heyer. This is the second part of our tour through Regency Buck, originally published in the 1930s. And if you listened to last week's episode, you may remember that we broke things off a little unexpectedly. So this might start on a somewhat abrupt note, but hopefully it isn't too jarring. As a reminder, Regency Buck is about Judith Taverner and her trials and tribulations as she navigates Regency society and her relationship with her infuriating guardian, the Earl of Worth, and her unfortunately amorous cousin, Bernard Taverner. Also, her brother Peregrine is there, doing Regency Himbo things. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the episode. And now, on to the show.
Books. Books. Books.
So, we've made our big debut into society.
We have debuted.
We have done better than anyone expected us to.
Because we won over Beau Brummel.
And Beau Brummel comes to call on her.
He comes a-calling,
and he gives her a primer on not just succeeding, but excelling in society. And he basically tells her to pick up affectations.
Okay.
He's like, you need to stand out. You need to be, and the thing you have to do is like, pick a couple of affectations and like commit to them.
You need a shtick.
And never, ever, 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 ever appear to second guess yourself. Just do it absolutely confidently, and you will carry the day.
Which is not bad advice.
No.
Of this time,
it's great advice.
Yeah.
Especially for Regency society.
Correct.
And so she decides that she's going to get her own phaeton, a perch phaeton, and she's going to start driving herself around the park.
Feminist.
Uh-huh.
Feminism.
Monstrous. And Beau Brummel's like, excellent plan. Like,
perfect.
11-10. So proud of you, babe.
Horny for it, babe.
And so when she tells Lord Worth that she is buying one, he says, first he tries to talk her into doing something more safe. And she's like, nonsense. I am a great driver. I am fantastic at driving. And he's like, prove it.
Here, yeah, okay.
So he takes her out. He allows her, as a test, to drive his curricle, not with the chestnuts, but with the grays.
Different.
This is the Regency equivalent of, I don't know, like a Fast and the Furious movie, when the big muscly hero lets his love interest get behind the wheel of his souped-up sports car.
He's like, try out the Lamborghini.
Exactly. Which is when we find out. When we first meet Henry the Tiger, one of the things that the Lord Worth says to Judith to piss her off is that he never drives women because Henry's a misogynist.
What an insane thing to
Henry
add to the conversation.
His like adorable Cockney child servant
is a huge misogynist. Okay, Lord Worth.
And so they go out and they get in the carriage and Henry's there. And the Earl tells Henry to take his instructions from Miss Taverner. And Henry says, "Me lord, you ain't never gonna let a female drive us? What about my pride?"
What a weird character development for Henry the Tiger, but sure.
And there's a whole back and forth where Henry's like, other people want to hire me. I could go work for somebody else.
And not have the shame of taking instructions from a woman.
And the Earl of Worth is like, you can go take another job. And Henry's like, well, you wouldn't be able to get on without me.
I'm a necessary part of this operation.
They have a very cute dynamic.
All right.
It's adorable, quite frankly.
I love that.
It takes a while, but Henry calms down. Miss Taverner
takes the reins.
Literally takes the reins. They go on a drive. There's a bunch of, I don't know. There are so many horse girl details. She does a good job, and it's hot, and a bunch of people are like, oh my God.
Can you believe?
Worth is letting a woman drive his grays.
He probably doesn't even have a penis anymore.
So someone sees them go by and is like, Henry's going to be furious. Maybe now I can hire him.
So not only is misogyny a big part of Henry's personality, but it's also like well known throughout society.
And specifically, Henry is apparently like a very sought after
Tiger? A sought after super misogynist young man tiger?
I think part of what I think Henry is supposed to be quite young. Like, I think Henry is supposed to be a literal child.
Yeah, I'm envisioning like a 12-year-old.
Right. And so I think part of the joke here is that Henry is enough of a child that he's like, ew, girls. You know what I mean?
It's not like, I hate women. It's like,
he's not old enough to be like, I hate...
Girls are yucky.
It is exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the joke.
Still, the idea that this is a person who's so sought after in society that when someone sees him as the tiger and a lady is driving, they're like, ooh, here's my chance.
But you know what? They go on their drive and they come back, and by the time they've pulled back up in front of the house, Henry is looking at Miss Taverner with something akin to respect in his sharp eyes. It ain't what I'm used to, nor yet what I approves of, he said. But you handles 'em very well, miss. Very well you handles 'em.
I love this person.
I should...
This is such a strange character for
It ain't
her.
what I'm used to.
That's better. Thank you.
Nor yet what I approves of. Where's Jess versus when we need her?
That was very good, though. If I close my eyes, you are Henry the Tiger.
But you handles 'em very well, miss. Very well you handles 'em.
Right.
Right. So we've earned the right to drive our carriage. The Earl is impressed with us.
And that, we don't want to admit it, but we like that.
Oh, yeah. No, we're
into that.
We've been told that we did good, and we are definitely not quietly going, thank you, Daddy.
So who's going to be her tiger?
You know, they don't really mention that. I think when she's driving the Phaeton, she doesn't have one, question mark. I think you only have a tiger when you're driving a curricle in 4.
Or like a carriage.
Yeah. There's a whole thing where Peregrine's like, I'll buy your horses for you. And she's like, no.
No, you dumbass. I'll buy my own horse flesh.
I don't think that's quite necessary.
She's like, I'm a horse girl. Let me be.
So she acquires a very spirited black horse, and she has, quote, It was not long before Miss Taverner's black was as well known as Lord Morton's long-tailed grey. She had learned the trick of acquiring idiosyncrasies. So she's doing it. She's pulling it off.
She has her affect, and her affect is, I'm a feminist horse girl.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm really leaning into that with confidence.
Meanwhile, Peregrine is getting super into drinking, gambling, sporting.
As the rogue little brother always
slang.
does.
Yeah.
He's spending his days and nights at White's.
He's getting just out of hand enough that she's a little anxious about it. So she decides to go see Lord Worth to be like, can you
rein in,
get my little brother to calm the down?
To stop acting like a country bumpkin who's never been out in society.
Correct. And she goes to see him in his house, and she's taken into a very particular room in his house where he is surrounded by like walls and walls of jars because he is
a turn
blending his own snuff.
What a weirdly specific detail for her to add to this.
There is a lot of snuff content in this book as well. Like we get so much detail about all of these people's hobbies.
It is wild that that's a hobby.
There's an objectively surprisingly romantic scene where she's like, I need you to get my brother in check. And his response is essentially, do you think I don't know everything that your brother is up to? And what do you want me to do? Have him restrained? Eventually, you know.
He'll peter out eventually.
I'm keeping an eye on it. I will act if it's necessary.
But sometimes natural consequences must take their course.
Indeed. And then...
Now try my snuff. I just blended this up just for you, romance.
Well, so she, again, because she's just acquired her first affectation, she's the one who is like, do ladies use snuff, Lord Worth?
Oh, another affectation.
If a lady wished to take snuff for the purpose of being a little out of the way, which would she choose, sir? He smiled. She would request either Lord Petersham or Lord Worth to put her up a special recipe to be known as Miss Taverner's sort. Her eyes gleamed. Will you do that for me? I will do it for you, Miss Taverner, if you can be trusted to treat it carefully. And then he lectures her about proper snuff maintenance.
Coming from the man who's in a room with the walls lined with jars of snuff. Can you be responsible about this?
And he gives her all of these tips on, like, you have to get a snuff box and you have to do it and you need to
have a tiny spoon.
But there's a whole thing where, like, you need to be able to, like, flick it open with one hand and, like...
Another thing that she went really deep in the research about.
Oh, so deep. It's pages. Multiple pages of snuff.
How romantic. He's gonna make me my own blend.
Uh-huh.
Daddy made me a snuff blend.
So then she does the thing where she briefly veers out of close third, and we get a whole back and forth between Lord Worth and some other random lord who we, like, never see again, which is where we discover that if Peregrine dies before he marries and has an heir, Judith inherits his half of the fortune.
Oh, so she gets everything.
She gets everything.
So even if he marries, but if he hasn't had a kid, it's all to Judy.
Well, if he marries, I think it might go to his wife.
Oh.
He needs to not get married is the important part. Well, if he dies.
He needs to die a bachelor for it to benefit Judy the most.
This is also when we find out.
What a weird thing for him to be having a conversation with some rando who's never really referenced again.
It's the Colonel Hanger.
Of course.
An old rake.
Of course.
Oh, but the reason that all of this gossip is happening is because people are starting to propose to Judith. Or specifically, they're starting to ask Lord Worth for his permission.
To propose
to Judith.
Because they're so just horny for the fact that she rides around alone in her phaeton.
She is socially succeeding. People want to marry her. She's got affectations, and she's fucking rich. And everyone knows all of the details about her fortune because that's important.
And that's what everyone knew.
Yes. At which point, the Earl of Worth writes her a letter to be like, you need to start telling these men that there is no way you're getting married while you are still my ward. Full stop.
Do we know, has it been explained how the wardship ends? Is it like they age out of it? And what is the age?
So she will become independent when she reaches her majority at 21.
And she is 20.
Yes. So we only have a year.
Okay. But he's like, in this year, you mine.
It's not even, here. The day after he had politely refused his consent to the third aspirant, Miss Taverner received a letter by the twopenny post. It was quite short. The Earl of Worth presents his compliments to Miss Taverner and begs to inform her that he would be obliged if she would assure any gentleman aspiring to her hand that there is no possibility of his lordship consenting to her marriage within the period of his guardianship.
And is she, like, closed fist raged?
She is furious.
Yeah, okay. How dare you?
She's so mad.
I didn't even know you.
But most emphatically, she's mad not because there's anyone she has in mind.
It's that he dared to...
Correct.
Okay.
I have how very dare written in
how very dare.
The margin of my book.
How very dare, indeed.
This is also the point at which, and I want to apologize to the history nerds in the audience here. I don't know how familiar everyone is with the Regency period or the many, many children of King George and Queen Charlotte. But this book is brimming with men who are somewhere in the royal
realm.
Sphere. We are eventually going to meet the Prince Regent, but even before we get to the Prince Regent himself, there are a bunch of royal brothers rattling around, and between 3 and 4 of them try very hard to hit on Miss Taverner, and I can't keep them straight. I'm sorry, I just can't.
It's okay.
There are too many. Their names are, they all have different titles, you know what I mean? So it's the Duke of this and the...
And very illustrious titles, too. They're not short.
And I just can't keep track. So
that's fine. So there's some royal blood in the mix.
The Duke of Cambridge shows up. See, this is the thing. The Duke of Clarence turns up and decides that he really likes her, and they start hanging out. He starts intercepting her in the park and climbing up onto her carriage to ride around with her. And she's like, this is nice. We're friends.
And he's like, that's not what I'm That's not what I'm trying to do here, ma'am.
He's like old enough to be her father by quite a wide margin. And she's like, that's nice.
That's nice. I love this.
Judith and the Earl, there's several different versions of this, but like they go through, they're just antagonizing each other. There's a whole thing where he writes to say that he's coming to see her and she's offended that he didn't give her enough warning, so she isn't there, but then he figures out that she's figured out that he's not going to be, and they're just
sparring.
They're just needling each other to do it. They have their first big confrontation about the marriage thing.
Okay.
He has been continually reminding her that, quote, "You are not the only sufferer under your father's will." She's like, "I don't want you to be my stupid f***ing guardian." And he's like, "Well, I don't really want to be your f***ing guardian. But either way, you're not marrying anybody." And she's like, "How dare you?" And he's like, "Did you even want to marry any of them?" She's like, "No, but that's not the point." You can imagine,
Yes.
You know exactly what's happening.
Yes. We're batting back and forth. Bing bong, bing bong, bing bong.
He points out that none of them are good enough for her. And then not only that, but he can't think of anyone good enough for her. And she's like, "Except yourself, do you mean?" And he's like, "Meh."
Maybe.
He says, "There is little likelihood of gaining my consent to your marriage with anyone whom I can at the moment call to mind. Except," said Miss Taverner through her teeth, "yourself." "Except, of course, myself," he agreed suavely. "And do you suppose, Lord Worth, that there is any great likelihood of my marrying you?" inquired Judith in a sleek, deceptive voice. He raised his brows. "Until I ask you to marry me, Miss Taverner, not the least likelihood," he replied gently. Okay. They get into a little bit more of a tete-a-tete, and then he backs her up against a cabinet.
Of course.
He took her chin in his hand and made her hold up her head and stood looking down at her with a faintly sardonic smile. "You are handsome, Miss Taverner. You are not unintelligent, except in your dealings with me. Here is some advice for you. Keep your sword sheathed."
All right. You keep your sword sheathed.
And then he's like, "I brought your snuff."
Oh, and by the way, here's your special blend. Daddy's little snuff.
And she's furious with him, but also she's got her snuff, and that's nice. And then her cousin comes over.
Bernard.
Mm-hmm. He wants to marry her. And he is getting a little... He just keeps
nudging.
He keeps nudging. He, like, puts his hand on her, and she's like, "Can you not?"
Just like, "Don't touch me. I know we're cousins and all, but can you not touch me?"
Her cousin is now aware that she cannot marry anyone while she's still Lord Worth's ward.
Because has he gone to Lord Worth at this point and asked for permission to propose?
I think he might have.
Okay.
But also, Lord Worth has just been like, no.
Everyone back the f*** off.
Bernard keeps making all of these little comments about Lord Worth to Judith.
He's a rake.
Well, and he's like, you have a lot of money and his hobbies are really expensive. He's a dandy,
All of that fine fashion costs money.
Uh-huh.
All of those beautiful chestnuts cost money. And I'm just your sweet, poor old cousin.
Uh-huh.
And I don't have fancy tastes.
You've nailed it.
And just like, what about me? And I would be a fine steward of your funds.
And they run into each other at a bookstore at one point.
Oh, we both love books.
And she keeps being like, "I don't like you like that." And he's like, "But it's all I could ever want is to just be like a good friend to you."
And also, like, have you read the list of my qualities? Because on paper, I'm a cool catch for you, Judith.
Yeah. Another thing we're going to gloss over really quick, because this is the next thing.
Is Bernard going to be the one in the garden? Oh. Oh. I don't like when it's familial.
And the last thing that happens in this chapter
is that's her first cousin.
That is her first cousin, yeah.
Which is not unheard of, but like is also like a close cousin. This isn't like 3 cousins removed.
No, this is an immediate cousin.
This is like we have the same grandparents.
One of the various princes is getting more serious about hitting on her, and there are several very funny asides where various characters are like, "Oh, why didn't you just marry that guy?"
That royal man.
And they're like, "What, are you worried about all of his shunned mistresses and many, many illegitimate children? Don't worry about it. It's fine.
It's fine."
And she's like, "I don't."
He's royal.
And then finally, Perry has fallen in love.
I was about to say, where's Perry in this? Is he like, has he factored in at all to the irritation over Lord Worth saying no? Or is he like, I'm with Lord Worth, you shouldn't be getting married yet?
Perry has been running around drinking and gambling and falling in love with somebody else. He's just not, it's not registering.
Is it an opera singer?
No, it's a nice young lady.
Oh.
Perry has found himself a nice young lady.
Oh, so he's gonna marry.
And he is smitten and he wants to marry her. And Judith is like, he's not gonna let you marry her.
Uh-oh, I bet he will. 'Cause he's a man.
So, Peregrine goes to find and there's this whole extended bit where the Earl is like kind of dodging Perry's,
because he knows,
approach. And Peregrine finally corners him at his club. The other gentlemen, to be polite, even though Peregrine is not quite doing the done thing, they invite him to join them. And Peregrine loses badly. Loses a lot of money. Like way more money than his allowance will cover. And he writes an IOU to Lord Worth for some massive sum.
Mm-hmm.
And then he is summoned to see Lord Worth the next day.
And he's like, I know I just did a bad, but also, by the way, can I get married?
Well, he doesn't even register at first that he's done a bad. He's like, can I get married?
And also squander my fortune. Daddy, please.
Lord Worth teaches Peregrine a lesson. So they have this extended confrontation. You wrote me this IOU for thousands of pounds. How do you intend to pay it? And Peregrine's like, well, can't you just give me an advance on my allowance? And he's like, no,
I don't have to.
So how are you going to pay it? And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, if I find out you've gone to a single moneylender in this city, I will ruin you.
Lesson taught.
Yeah. So he like backs him into a corner, makes him just absolutely panic. And then he shreds the IOU.
Said mischief managed.
So he scares the bejesus out of him, and then he shreds his IOU, and then Peregrine does the young man thing where he's like, no, I'm a man of honor, I pay my debts. And he's like, just shut up.
Shut your mouth.
You child. Like, you absolute child.
You stupid idiot boy.
And then Peregrine's like, can I get engaged?
By the way, excuse me. Excuse me.
I know this is like a little bit of an awkward pivot, but can I get married?
But like, my heart is horny for a lady.
Lord Worth says yes. To the
engagement. Oh, wait till Judith finds out. The way her tiny lady fists are gonna clench in rage.
They can get betrothed and announce the betrothal.
They can read the banns.
But they cannot get married for a minimum of 6 months. And Lord Worth is like, if you still like her in 6 months,
then we'll do it.
Then go to town.
I'm teaching you another lesson.
Do as you please about it. Your prospective mother-in-law will no doubt inform all her acquaintance of it, so it may as well be as formal as you like. Lady Fairford, said Peregrine severely, is a very superior woman, sir. Quite above that sort of thing.
No mamma of the ton is above that sort of thing, Peregrine.
If she is above trying to secure a husband with an estate of £12,000 a year for her daughter, she is unique, said the Earl, with a certain tartness.
Don't be a fool, Peregrine.
So, the betrothal is announced.
How does Judith feel?
She's just kind of like, okay.
Oh, all right.
It's like, I don't know how that panned out, but sure.
Go for it.
At least Peregrine will calm down, right? Now that he's engaged.
Sure.
And
or will he?
We get a quiet side scene where we see Lord Worth hiring a young boxer for non-boxing reasons. ... question mark. And then Peregrine goes to a cockfight.
Of course he does.
Uh-huh.
Are we supposed to take from that little Lord Worth scene that, like, he's soft-hearted beneath his and wants to, like, use his wealth to help people? Or
No,
are we supposed to think he's, like...
He's up to something.
Okay.
Also, I'm sure this is clearly some kind of boxing term, but they keep like in all of the boxing stuff, they keep referring to people as good bottoms.
No. That doesn't translate. Some things, you want to talk about revisionist history. Georgette.
So good, they got a good bottom.
I mean, bouncy on the ring.
There'll come a good cock out of a ragged bag.
Stop it. Stop it right now.
So Peregrine goes to the cockfight and is accused of cheating.
Uh-oh.
The person who accuses him of cheating...
Can I ask how you cheat in a cockfight?
By squeezing the cock.
Stop it. I regret asking.
By squeezing the cock when it's head-to-head with another cock.
But you're not supposed to be in there with the cocks.
Apparently it's a thing that happens. To explain it in depth would be to get into some, frankly, mildly upsetting animal abuse, so let's just leave it at...
Okay.
He's
I'm
accused...
going to think about that for a while, and that's really upsetting, but that's fine.
He's accused of unfairly squeezing his cock.
All right.
In the cockfight.
Onward. Onward.
And there's something a little fishy about the man...
Who's accusing
him, who starts out seeming very drunk, but maybe isn't as drunk as he's trying to seem.
Mm-hmm.
And it escalates into insults, and insults escalate into someone hitting someone, and then...
Is this other man Gentry?
No.
Oh. Is he the purveyor of the cocks?
He's Mr. Farnaby.
Oh.
He's...
Sounds like he owns a circus.
Yeah. And then...
Fisticuffs are flying.
Leads to...
A duel. Who does he pick as his second?
His buddy, Fitzjohn.
Oh, they've stayed friends.
Yeah, they've stayed pals.
That's cute.
Yeah.
They both wear long pantaloons to the duel. Won't be let in Almax, but you can duel in a full pant.
So then it's dueling time.
Oh, God. All right.
And again, in the interest of something resembling brevity, I'm going to skip...
Oh, God, does Peregrine die?
I'm going to skip a lot. There's so much lead up to the dueling. There's so much lead up to the
She's
dueling.
like, I want you to know that I know how a duel works.
There's back and forth. There's emotions.
There's counting.
It's detailed. The long and the short of it is they hire a doctor.
As you do.
Because you hire a doctor to come administrate your duels.
Yes, you do.
There's seconds, there's guns, there's a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Peregrine is pale but brave.
Yes, and at dawn, I'm sure.
And they show up.
In the misty morning.
And they're all arrested.
It is illegal.
Indeed. And it turns out that the doctor accidentally
told someone,
betrayed them, because somebody came to see the doctor and was like, I'd like to hire you for a duel. And he's like, I'm already engaged for a duel. Is it the same duel?
Ah.
Yeah.
Loose-lipped doctor ruins everything. And headlines read.
They've been turned in, and so no duel happens.
No duel, and they're all in jail.
No, I think they just get fined or something.
Okay.
Both were bound over to keep the peace. A great many formalities were gone through. Sureties were paid. The magistrate read them a lecture. And Mr. Fitzjohn longed for his breakfast. At last they were set free.
He said, give me those beans on toast. Toast and beans, please. It's been a very long morning.
So the duel doesn't happen.
But?
He goes home. There was a whole thing where he, left a note to be given to his sister if he didn't come back by a certain time, and then his footman panicked and gave her the note. She's like, he's dead, but he's not dead. He's fine. And the first thing he does is Bernard has arrived, and he accuses Bernard
of being the tattler.
And Bernard is...
Is this based on any, actual... knowledge, or it's just
timing of conversations and things?
Gotcha. Was Bernard at the cock squeeze?
Bernard knew enough.
He's about.
Yeah.
He's tangentially been about.
Peregrine's like, you told on us. And he's like, no, he doesn't say no.
Is it sort of like, how could you accuse me of that? We're cousins.
Exactly. And then Peregrine finally leaves the room, and Judith is like, you didn't deny it. And Bernard's like,
would you want your brother to die, my love?
And then basically is just like, I would do anything for your good opinion. And she's like, thank you for keeping him from dying.
But I still don't want to marry you, you plain motherfucker.
Pretty much, actually.
Yeah.
He says, to earn your good opinion, there's nothing I would not do. And she says, you have earned it. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you. I want more than gratitude, he said, holding her fast. Tell me, may I hope? I dare not press you. You have seemed to show me that you do not wish me to speak, and yet I must. Only assure me that I may hope. I ask no more. And he closes with the...
Boner killer.
He closes with the classic, well, is there anyone else? And she's like, no, there's no one else. And he's like, it'll have to do.
Great.
Yeah.
I like him less and less by the moment.
But, you know, he's her friend.
Sure.
He keeps showing up when there's problems and then
taking care of them.
Solving the problems.
And who cares if he's a plain duck?
And then we have a long, confusing scene in a pub.
Great.
With the Earl of Worth and Mr. Farnaby, the man...
The cockfight man.
The cockfight dueling man.
The squeezer.
And
as he's so known, the squeezer.
The squeezer from the cockfight. And the Earl of Worth sits down with him, and we get this very mysterious back and forth where he says, you were hired to put Peregrine Taverner out of the way, and you fumbled it.
Wait, are we supposed to believe that the Lord Worth wants Peregrine dead?
Maybe.
Oh, twist.
So they have this whole complicated conversation. He says... You were hired to put Sir Peregrine Taverner out of the way, and you have failed to earn your hire. Farnaby's hands clenched. He leaned forward. Damn you, shut your mouth, he whispered. You daren't say I was hired. Worth raised his brows. What makes you think that? He inquired. You can't say it. On the contrary.
I just did.
I can say it with the greatest of ease, my good Farnaby, and if you give me any trouble, I shall say it. And, my credit being good with the world, as I have already pointed out to you, I think my word will be believed before yours. We will put it to the test, if you like. And they go back and forth. Worth finally says, to force a duel on Sir Peregrine Taverner was one thing, but to do it in such a public spot as the Cockpit Royal was quite another. Those were not your instructions, I think. I find it hard to believe that even you could do such a stupid thing, Farnaby. Farnaby continues to insist that he wasn't hired, and that he hasn't touched a penny of it. Not only have you not touched a penny of it, but you are not going to touch a penny, said Worth, taking another pinch of snuff, and dusting his fingers with a fine handkerchief. You were not hired to put Sir Peregrine on his guard. Had you succeeded? But you did not succeed, Farnaby. So why should we waste time in idle conjecture? What I am endeavoring to point out to you is that though the reward has still to be earned, you are not the man to earn it.
Oh, so a reward is...
Farnaby asks what he means, and he says, I mean, Farnaby, that the task of disposing of Sir Peregrine must be left to some less clumsy hireling.
Cue young boxer.
Farnaby gets all up in arms, says something about, not suffering alone, and then he breaks off, and Worth tells him to go on. He says, I'm waiting to hear what it is you will say. Nothing, Farnaby said quickly. Not even the name of the man who hired you, said the Earl softly. Nothing, I tell you. No one hired me. The Earl shut his snuff-box. No doubt you are wise, he said. He might, who knows, take steps to put you out of the way, might he not? And I am afraid that even if you had the courage to divulge his name, it would not be of very much use.
His name is Bernard.
So there's much back and forth, and then we see Bernard Taverner. The Earl and Bernard get into it. There is another suspicious, slightly confusing back and forth where they're accusing each other of being up to no good. And the Earl finally says, Nevertheless, you do read me quite correctly. Those who meddle in my affairs do not prosper.
This would be the point in a current-day Regency romance where the author would say that he growled, which is very common, and I've never heard a grown man growl in seriousness, but it happens a lot.
There's no growling in this novel that I could find.
No,
Mostly,
this is a modern day.
When the Earl wants to be frightening, he just gets quieter and quieter.
Sinister.
Yeah.
Sinister.
The Earl spoke so softly that no one but Taverner could catch his words. Let me remind you, Mr. Taverner, that the well-being of your cousins do not lie in your hands, but mine.
And while I long suffer it, I shan't see them injured while under my protectorship.
You have been very assiduous in your attentions, but if you are cherishing dreams of a bridal, banish them. You will never marry Judith Taverner.
But, I've done the stuff. And by stuff, I mean hire someone to kill her brother.
Uh-huh. Maybe.
So that I can save her brother and look like the hero.
We don't know. We just don't know.
You're
It could
right.
be anybody.
You're right.
It could be either of them.
It could be, I guess.
This is also one of those things where the text gets punished for everything that came after it.
I know. I'm putting a lot of layers of current day reading onto poor Georgette's book, and that's not fair of me.
Things aren't as obvious when they're being done for the first time.
Yeah, this would have seemed, I'm sure, at the time very like, ooh, what's gonna happen? And now I'm just like, I've read this book 1,000 times.
I've read this book so many times.
In like 800 different iterations.
And I mean, to be clear, this is very much pulled from the romances that preceded it.
Mm-hmm.
But she was kind of she invented like the 21st century Regency.
Yeah,
novel.
she walked so we could run.
She literally.
She ambled through an archive so that I could read smut on my Kindle.
Yeah.
Thanks, Georgette. Get it, girl.
So, Judith goes off to a house party in the country. There's more royalty there.
As there often is.
There's a whole... Okay, so we need to take a moment to talk about Beau Brummel and the fact that he is 153% coded as a very, very queenie gay man in this book. And I refuse to believe that it is not intentional.
No, I would prefer to think that that's intentional.
Every time he comes on the page, there is a whole thing where they are going on a hunt, right?
He's not gonna kill an animal. Come on. Come on.
They have this whole thing where like he's like, well, you have to go on the hunt because it looks bad if you don't go on the hunt. But he doesn't want to go very far because he would get his tops and leathers splashed by all the greasy galloping farmers.
Not the greasy galloping farmers.
And they go out on the hunt and he disappears almost immediately. And it says, Mr. Brummel, encountered again at dinner, was unabashed. He had discovered a very excellent cheese in a farmhouse he had not previously known to exist, had regaled himself on it, and having satisfied himself that no speck of mud sullied his snowy tops, had ridden gently back to Belvoir to discuss with his hostess a plan for landscape gardening, which had occurred to him in the night watches.
I love a man who prioritizes cheese and landscaping over killing an animal.
There's a scene later where Judith is like, have you ever considered getting married? And he's like, I was engaged once, but I found out she ate cabbage and the connection just couldn't continue.
So I said to her, sashay away. You cannot stay.
In some of my research, I came across people talking about other novels of Hayer's being homophobic. And I'm not saying that that's not the case, but in this one, while there is heavy criticism of some of the very dandified, effeminate characters, the criticism is of their character as people. And Beau Brummel, who is again like 1,000%, like not, I don't even know if you can call it queer coded, except insofar as he never is overtly like, and then I went to have sex with a man.
But literally everything else about you.
It is everything but. And like, again, this was a woman who was in reasonably high society in England in the 20s and 30s, which she knew.
Oh, she definitely knew. She definitely knew what she was doing.
Absolute queen shit. We get a scene ripped right out of Pride and Prejudice where she's asked to play and she's like, I'm not very good at it. It's fine. She sings fine.
And then, of course, she's fine. A weekend in the country.
That's pretty much it. There's a house party.
How
it's a country
exciting.
weekend. She and the Earl.
Tit-a-tat.
Yeah, they're still sparring, but the sparring has taken on a slightly warmer tone. And then Perry nearly gets shot.
Bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. At the hunt? In the country? Is he in the country with them?
He almost gets robbed.
God.
And shot.
So every himbo thing happens to him in one book? Yeah. Big himbo energy. BHE, if you will.
He's traveling between, like, on his way back to London with his groom, and someone shoots at him from behind some trees. And his groom just barely manages to knock him out of the way.
Because he probably wasn't even paying attention.
And she's like, oh my God. And he's like, it's fine.
I'm fine.
You are overthinking it.
I mean, it didn't hit me, did it?
And then one of the royal siblings who has been setting his cap at Miss Taverner shows up and is like, marry me. I love you. Marry me. Come spend Christmas with me and the royal family. And they go into, he's like, don't worry about my mistress and many children.
It's fine.
It's fine. I'm ready for a real marriage. But this...
I won't stop seeing them, but I'm ready to be married to you.
But this puts Judith in a really awkward position because he is...
royalty.
Literally royalty.
And her warden is being like, no.
Well, it's not that. It's that she...
also doesn't want to be married to a 45-year-old man with a bunch of mistresses.
Yes, but also you can't just reject... She can't just
no,
be like...
you can't just be like, nah,
no.
I'm good.
And he's very pushy. And she panics. And
is this the one who's been climbing into her phaeton in the park?
I think so, but I get them all very muddled.
That's fine.
And so she kind of panics and is basically like, you should go see my
warden.
My guardian.
My guardian.
Maybe go see my guardian. You should ask him.
Make him do the thing, or the improper thing.
She's like, yeah, I mean, I would probably like to marry you, but, you know, I just can't make my own decisions.
Oh, my feeble female brain.
You're the boss of me. He's the boss of me. And she sends him off. She and Lord Worth finally see each other. And he goes, I think congratulations are in order.
She's like, wait, what?
I've heard that you're to become a duchess.
What? You were supposed to take care of this.
That is exactly what she says. And he's like,
what do you mean?
If you didn't want to say no, why didn't you say no? Why did you send him to me if you didn't want to become a duchess?
You idiot.
Says, good God, you've seen him then. Certainly. Did you not send him to me? Yes. No. Do not trifle with me. This is dreadful. Dreadful? Said his lordship, maddeningly calm. You could hardly make a more brilliant match, surely. You will have all the comfort and consequence of a most superior establishment, a position of the first consideration, and a husband who must be past the age of youthful folly. You are to be congratulated. I could not have wished to see you more creditably provided for. In addition, you will be assured of suitable female companionship in the person of your eldest daughter-in-law, Miss Fitzclarence, whom I believe to be near your own age.
I love that he's just such a bitch. Also, do we know how old the Earl is? Like, how old Lord Worth is?
Probably not too far apart in age from them if their fathers were besties.
Okay.
And he appears to be the only sibling? No, he has a younger brother. So I think he and Judith are both the older siblings, so they're probably reasonably close in age.
Okay.
Although he does call her, like, my child quite often.
Yuck.
But, you know, he's a man.
He's a daddy, so...
He's a daddy. He is, of course, fucking with her.
Obviously.
And
beautifully done, too. Just, like, very well done. And I'm sure she gets all, like... my nerves.
This is when he calls her Clorinda again, which he does anytime he's feeling particularly
saucy
and or affectionate. He gives her a hard time. She's like, how could you?
She is Miss Bennet, my poor nerves at this moment.
Yeah, very much so. And he's like, while I am your guardian, I am not going to let you get pushed into weird royal marriages you don't want. Also, we're spending Christmas together at my house.
Oh. All right.
She immediately goes from being like, oh, thank God you've bailed me out to
what the fuck?
Yeah.
You can't just make plans for me.
Basically. And he's like, I absolutely can.
Actually, it's my prerogative.
And you and Peregrine are spending Christmas at my house. We're going to the Worth estate. Getting a fucking carriage. It's Christmas time.
Let's go.
Which is what happens.
Michaelmas is upon us.
Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. They're off to Worth for Christmas. They get many gifts. There's a whole list of gifts. But before they leave, right before they leave, Bernard shows up again.
God.
Judith is getting increasingly worried about Peregrine and the fact that it seems like someone is trying to kill him, ? And Bernard has come, once again, to spread gossip.
That's what he loves the most.
And he comes to tell her that he saw the Earl of Worth in that pub conversing with the man who tried to duel Perry. And what could he possibly be doing that for?
Oh, sowing the seeds.
However little I may relish the office of informer, it is only right that you should be
Bullshit. You love the office of informer.
It is only right that you should be put upon your guard. What Worth's business with Farnaby may have been, I have no means of knowing. It must all be conjecture. I impute nothing. I merely tell you what I saw. The Earl, perceiving me, came across the room to my side. What passed between us I shall not repeat. It was enough to assure me that Worth regards me as a menace to whatever scheme he may have in mind. I was warned not to meddle in your concerns. Whether I am very likely to be intimidated by such a threat, I leave it to yourself to decide.
What a wild thing for him to come to this man's house.
Oh, they haven't left yet. This is right before they leave.
Wait, it's before they leave to go out to Worth, or...
It's before they leave to go to Christmas.
Okay.
Because, of course, he's not invited to Christmas.
Well, no, that's what I was like. Wait, he just shows up and is like, Merry Christmas. I'm going to talk shit about this guy in his own house.
Not quite, but as close as he could get to it.
Really snuck up there.
They get a bunch of gifts, including a small jar of snuff from which the sender's card was missing.
I wonder.
For Peregrine.
Oh. Poison snuff.
Mr. Brummel shows up and does some queen shit.
Love it.
Perry starts feeling rather unwell part of the way through Christmas.
Oh, I wonder why.
He's got a cough that won't go away. Judith is like, I think you're being poisoned. And he's like,
Judith.
You're so dumb.
You're so silly, girl.
You need to calm down.
You and your flighty feminine imagination.
He tells the Earl, he's like, Judith is crazy. She thinks I'm being poisoned.
And the Earl's like, wait.
And the Earl's like,
You get anything new? You ingesting anything new, my boy?
And everyone kind of implies that Judith is losing it.
Oh.
Well, he half takes her seriously and half is like, don't worry about it. Just stop worrying about things. You're worrying about too many things.
Daddy will take care of it.
Daddy will take care of it.
Put your faith in Daddy.
He checks up on some things. He probably...
He's just doing his daddy diligence.
Mm-hmm. He's asking about the snuff. He's asking where the snuff is kept. He's asking whether Judith has talked to Mr. Bernard Taverner about whether she thinks someone's trying to kill her brother. And she's like, of course I have.
I've talked to anyone that would listen.
He's my cousin.
And my friend. He's a tattler, but for good.
She accuses him of being jealous of Bernard, and he's like, that's the most insulting thing you've ever said to me.
That's ridiculous. Have you seen him?
And then she refers to the idea of marrying the Earl as odious. This is one of the few things where I was like, is this sexy? I don't think this has aged as well as you think it has.
Well, here it is. There's always one or two.
There are times, said the Earl, when, if I were in the habit of uttering exaggerated statements, I could almost echo that sentiment. Do not look daggers at me. I am wholly impervious to displays of that kind. Your tantrums may do very well at home, but they arouse in me nothing more than a desire to beat you soundly. And that, Miss Taverner, if I ever do marry you, is precisely what I shall do.
So here's the thing. If phrased in another way, I could see how that would maintain its sexiness, but that just sounds like spousal abuse.
Yeah.
Not spanking.
I think
which I think is what was the intention?
I think spanking would be the more appropriate contemporary term.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it sounds just like basic spousal abuse.
Yeah. It's not great.
I'd beat you senseless if we were to marry.
And they go back and forth, and they're fighting, but kind of sexy fighting. There are some apologies. Then the apologies are taken back. And then all of a sudden his brother appears.
Who we've not yet met yet.
No! Charles.
Charles.
Yes. Captain Audley.
Captain.
Who's been injured in the wars.
Ooh.
And has come home.
Does he have a disfiguring scar?
His left arm is in a sling.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And he's the fun brother.
Of course, there's always one.
Uh-huh.
Him and Peregrine are going to get on splendidly.
Actually, it's him and Judith who become besties immediately.
Oh, interesting.
Because he's everything his brother is not. He's charming. He's fun. He's bubbly.
And that's what she wants.
He's nice.
Not brooding.
Uh-huh.
Overbearing. Smoldering.
Indeed. He's the opposite of all of those things. But he and his brother have...
He's like a non-dastardly Wickham.
Yeah, exactly.
Compared to Darcy's very rigid, rigidity.
He's just goofy.
Or maybe
like
he's a Colonel Fitzwilliam.
He's a sweet, goofy man.
We like that.
Yeah, but like smart.
Why
Like,
don't we write more characters like that?
I don't know. But Judith leaves the room and
Cinnamon roll.
to close out chapter 14, which, by the way, we're on chapter 14. The captain and the Earl of Worth have a very ominous little back and forth to close out the chapter. The captain jokes quite a bit about marrying Judith, having met her for all of 3 seconds, and the Earl is like, no.
Over my dead body.
Absolutely not.
I'll break your other arm.
And he says, first you shall tell me whether I am to hold off from the heiress. He says, I think you may be quite useful to me. The heiress has a brother. I am not the least interested in her brother, objected the captain. Possibly not, but I have a considerable interest in him, said Worth. He looked the captain over meditatively. I think, Charles, I am nearly sure, that you are going to become very friendly with young Peregrine, if he will let you. Unfortunately, he does not like me, and his prejudice may extend to you as well. Alas, why do you want him to like me? Because, the Earl said slowly, I need someone to be in his confidence whom I can trust. Good God, why? Demanded the captain in lively astonishment. Peregrine Taverner, said Worth, with a certain deliberation, is an extremely wealthy young man, and if anything were to happen to him, his sister would inherit the greater part of his fortune. Very well. Let us by all means drown him in the lake, said the captain gaily. Plainly he must be disposed of. He is being disposed of, said the Earl, without the least trace of emotion in his level voice. For the past 5 days, he has been inhaling poisoned snuff.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum!
Bum, 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 bum. That's exactly how a very dramatic Law and Order episode from the 90s would have started, though.
That is true, yeah.
Yeah.
So Captain Audley has come on the scene. He and Judith become besties.
I love this dynamic.
There's some more horse girl shit where...
As you will.
He's...
Oh, does she let him ride in her phaeton with him?
Well, no, so they're still at...
Oh, they're still at the...
They're still at Worth.
Oh, they're still at the ancestral family home.
Yeah, they're at the family estate. And the Earl absents himself for a day. Captain Audley is like, I can't drive with my...
You want to do horse hijinks, girly?
My left arm all fucked up, but why don't... Would you like to take us on a drive? And he basically convinces her to low-key steal the Earl's curricle and 4 with the Greys, who are his, like...
The Lambo horses.
Yeah, his favorite super special horses. Hot girls drive fast horses.
Horse girls do it well.
They take out the Lambo horses.
Hell yeah.
And he sees them, and he gets kind of mad at them, but not that mad.
No.
And mostly is like, what if there'd been an accident? And she's like, I'm fine. I'm very good at this. Then he calls her Clorinda again. He's like, you wanted to vex me. And she's like, no, I didn't.
But kind of.
But he tells her that he doesn't want her and Peregrine to leave Worth yet because he's concerned about Peregrine's safety.
And have we, like, just totally, like, stopped caring about the fact that Peregrine is engaged?
No, he's still engaged. His fiance is not too far. He's been going back and forth seeing his fiance. Okay. It's fine. I don't think we ever really see her on the page at all. She just exists. He's in love. It's good.
Thumbs up.
It seems like Judith and Captain Audley are going to have a thing, but Lord Worth is like, I shall not permit the two of you to be married. It wouldn't suit.
I can't have it.
And she's like, I didn't really want to marry him anyway.
So it's kind of just to make you gels.
But finally they go back to London. The cousin comes back to give her more gossip. This time he's telling her about the IOU, the damning IOU that he saw. You know, did you know that Perry owes Earl of Worth thousands and thousands of pounds?
Bernie loves goss.
And she's like, what a scoundrel. There's a bunch of quips about Lord Byron.
She was like, I'm going to get this in. This is for me, and I'm going to get this in.
Their cousin recommends a new groom for Perry to hire, which he does. Now that they're back from Christmas and an indeterminate amount of time has passed, it's time to go to Brighton.
Must take in the bracing sea air.
They go back into the exact same back and forth that they had where the Earl is like, we're all going to Brighton. And she's like, fine. And he's like, I've rented you a house. She's like, I don't want the house you rented. And he's like, I think you do. And then he does like a reverse psychology on her where he's like, fine, you can have the other house. And it turns out that was the house he wanted her to take the whole time.
Because he knows her.
Uh-huh.
He's on to her ways.
She and the Earl are having more fun than they've ever had in a weird way. And she's proved herself now multiple times to be a hot girl who drives a fast horse. And she, at first, half jokes about driving herself down to Brighton. The Earl absolutely forbids it.
Which obviously means she's going to do it.
So she and Perry decide to race to Brighton.
Uh-oh. Someone's going to take a tumble.
Worth has pissed her off so much that she is blind with rage. And she decides that she is going to race to Brighton, driving herself completely alone.
Wise.
Except for a groom. This is a huge problem.
What? Why?
She goes charging off, and again, we get all of Georgette's...
all the horse content.
All the horse content, all the research. We understand how the highways worked. We understand how changing your horses works. We understand how
many times I'd have to brake between Brighton and London and
toll roads and how toll roads work. But here's the thing. Judith is doing quite well. In fact, she is even winning. But she hits her first stop where she needs to change her horses. She starts to notice herself being noticed. She has overstepped the mark. This was
too much.
A mistake.
A bridge too far.
She starts noticing herself being stared at on the road, but then she actually stops to change her horses. And
well, people are probably like, what is this like unchaperoned rando woman who clearly has money
on the busiest, like one of the busiest roads in the country? Like she's
just doing alone.
It's bad. She has overdone it. She's in danger. People are recognizing her.
Uh-oh.
And they're starting to, like, she can see the gossip happening in real time.
Bernie won't have to come to her with this gossip. She knows it's happening.
It's a little bit too late now, right?
Correct.
Like, she and Peregrine are racing. She's going to do the thing.
She's been seen.
She stops to change her horses again. She gets back on the road. It's a little bit like, well, too late now. I've f***ed up. And who does she see on the road but a curricle and 4 with a beautiful team of chestnuts?
So she knows he's about.
And Henry, the tiger, is like, what does he say? Lordy governor, if it ain't that there Miss Taverner.
Shut up, Henry.
And her groom, Judson, her groom, who has thus far been on her side, is like, I think they're going to chase us down. And she's like, bet. And they actually go.
Oh, you wanted to see a race, Judson? Let's go.
Fast and Furious Regency Road is commenced. She goes
Hell
thundering
yeah.
off. The Earl comes chasing her. He, of course...
intercepts her.
He overtakes her.
Obviously. His horse flesh being stronger. Strengthy beasts.
They both drive beautifully, but inexorably. He overtakes her, passes her, and then is waiting for her at the next inn. And he is fucking furious.
I mean, I don't want to be on his side, but this was not a well-calculated choice.
No. She has been driven by her own anger into...
a really poor decision.
She really f***ed up.
Yeah.
This was... He told her absolutely not, and she said bet, and it was a mistake.
Correct.
She gets into the yard of the inn, and he comes striding out. And she's trying to change her horses, and he's like, no. Says, she glanced down into his face and experienced a sensation of shock. She had seen the Earl supercilious. She had seen him scornful. But never had she encountered in him a look so blazingly angry. The breath caught in her throat, but she said with tolerable composure, By no means, Lord Worth. You were averse, I believe, from my driving to Brighton in Peregrine's curricle. You must know that I have submitted to your decree, and have engaged to race him there in my own curricle instead.
This is an interesting tactic to have taken, Judith. I don't know if right now would be the time that I would poke this bear to be like, I didn't actually do the thing that you said I couldn't do.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to get spanked here in the lawn of this rando inn?
His eyes met hers. He said, with a menace she could not mistake in his voice, "Your race is run. I have a good deal to say to you. If you choose, it shall be said here in the open street, but I think you will prefer to hear it alone." And she's like, oh, no.
I did a bad. Uh-oh.
I did a whoops.
My lord, my bee.
But she's bridling again. She's still mad. And she says, "How dare you? I shall finish as I began. This interference in the way I choose to travel passes all bounds." And he says, "Miss Taverner, I shall not remind you that you are my ward, for it is a fact you must well be aware of. But I shall give you a warning that may not come amiss. While I hold the reins, you will run as I choose, and by God, ma'am, if you try to take the bit between your teeth, it will be very much the worse for you." And they get angrier and angrier.
And do their faces get closer and closer and closer?
He finally gets her to understand that she has really screwed up. Like, he says, "Do you think it suits my pride to have my ward drive down to Brighton windblown, disheveled, a butt for every kind of coarse wit, an object of disgust to any person of taste and refinement? Take a look at yourself." And that's when she melts, basically.
I mean, again, I don't want him to be right, but in this societal situation, Judith, what are you doing?
Yeah, they go back and forth some more. She gets angrier and angrier. He threatens to spank her, basically.
A theme emerges.
I mean, I think he threatens to beat. I think he says beat, but I think they mean spank. I'm choosing to believe they mean spank.
I don't want to believe the alternative, so that's what we're going to choose.
They say some horrible things to each other.
Great.
He finally storms out, and she sinks in. He puts her in a closed carriage, and says, "She knew herself to be the wretchedest creature alive. There could be no defending her conduct. She had realized at Horley how indecorous it was, and had now the mortification of having earned Worth's condemnation. He thought of her with disgust. He had not scrupled to humiliate her, nor to address her in terms of the most galling contempt. It was small wonder that she should have lost her temper with him. He had been unpardonable. The better understanding which had seemed to be growing up between them was quite at an end. She did not care. Unless he begged her pardon, she could not bring herself to meet him again without feelings of the strongest revulsion, and she was sure that he would never beg her pardon. Her credit with him was utterly destroyed. He was odious, insolent, overbearing, and she herself little better than vulgar Lady Laid. So, they are at an impasse.
Yet again.
She has fucked up. He is furious. She hates him, but also she has just been publicly shamed, and she has maybe caused a
huge scandal.
Huge scandal. And that is where we're going to leave them.
Titillated. Scintillating.
Any closing thoughts on where we are so far?
Oh, no, it's good. I mean, Georgette's getting it.
Georgette knows what's up.
Yeah. And it is, like, as a person, as I've said, who reads these in modern day, it's like every trope imaginable. And I'm loving it.
Every single one.
Yeah.
Oh, and very quick. So, Clorinda, his nickname for her.
Yes.
So there is, I looked into this. I was like, where the hell does Clorinda come
what
from?
even is that name?
So there are not a lot of Clorindas in literature. And I found a couple of potential sources, but I've landed on one that I think is most likely. And surprise, it's a sapphic love poem.
What?
There was a Clorinda, like a painting and poem from like Italy in like the 1500s. There's a very old version of one of the stories of Robin Hood where he has a wife named Clorinda, but it's not one of the most popular or one of the most common. And then there's a poet from the 1600s named Aphrabehn, Aphrabehn.
Okay.
who sounds fascinating and was a super scandalous figure for her consistent and persistent sapphic poetry in place. And she wrote a poem called To the Fair Clorinda, which I posted on our Instagram if anyone is curious. And it is a lesbian love poem, very specifically. But the reason that I think that is the Clorinda that is being referenced is that A, her works absolutely would have been the kind of thing that an educated Regency aristocrat would have been reading. But B of all, she had apparently a resurgence in popularity in the 20s and 30s and was very popular with like Virginia Woolf and a bunch of other female writers of that era. So not only would she have been feasibly familiar to our characters, but she would have been feasibly familiar to our author. So I'm pretty sure the nickname he's pulling for her is from an old lesbian love poem, which is hilarious.
It's hilarious. What a wildly, like, deep dive in some ways for Georgette to be choosing.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like an Easter egg in some ways.
So the first full sentence of the poem is, To the fair Clorinda, who made love to me, imagined more than woman. Fair lovely maid, or if that title be too weak, too feminine, for nobler thee, permit a name that more approaches truth, and let me call thee lovely, charming youth.
Which also does fit the character.
Yes.
So, like, I think you're right.
But there's also some, like, gender-bendy stuff in there.
Yeah.
And I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Georgette was not afraid to impose anachronistic values into her impeccably well-researched books.
I love that for her.
I do too. And we're going to talk about that and why that's so important, along with the conclusion of our thrilling tale next episode.
Amazing.
In the meanwhile, is there anything you would like to plug? Anywhere you would like people to find you?
As always, you can find me on Instagram at Madeline and 9, N-I-N-E. Otherwise, no. I lead a socially quiet life.
Well, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yes, thank you for regaling me.
It was wonderful. And thank you all out there for being with us. We will be back quite soon with the thrilling conclusion. Just a reminder that if you would like to support the show, we do have merch now on TeePublic. There's
very sweet new t-shirts.
Thank y'all. There's a link in the show notes. I'm very excited about it. And if you want a mug or a sticker or what have you, it would help me quite a bit. And, you know, if you don't want some merch, that's totally fine. Just keep listening and, I don't know, maybe tell a friend that we exist.
Share an Instagram story.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And, yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for joining me. And as always, if you can, this week, this month, this pay period, consider supporting a living author, because they could sure use the love. Bye.
Bye.
Didn't Read It was created, written, recorded, and edited by me, Grace Todd. You can follow the show on Instagram or Twitter at Didn't Read It.
Our theme song is Books, written, performed, and recorded by William Albritton.
For sources cited and a full list of episodes, you can visit us at didntreaditpod.com.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review. It makes a big difference, and we appreciate it immensely.
If you did not enjoy the show, we are accepting applications for a full-time nemesis at didntreaditpod@gmail.com. Special thanks to Black Iris Social Club in Richmond, Virginia, and to Pesca Trio Publishing.